And today, President Biden is expected to host European Union leaders at the White House, with the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine likely to be on the agenda.
Yeah, he addressed the nation from the Oval Office last night, urging continued military support, also funding for the two countries. The president said the outcomes of both wars are vital to American national security. KCAL News correspondent Ian Lee has more from Tel Aviv.
Sitting in the Oval Office, President Biden made the case for his $100 billion funding request to Congress, which would include support for Israel and Ukraine.
It's a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations.
The president said he doesn't want to see U.S. troops fighting in either conflict zone. Hours before his address, a U.S. Navy ship intercepted missiles and drones launched by Houthi rebels in Yemen that were potentially headed to Israel.
It is our aim to avoid any regional expansion of Israel's conflict with Hamas.
President Biden pledged to give $100 million in humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians. During his trip here this week, he struck a deal to move trucks filled with aid from Egypt to Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians are now in desperate need of water, food, and fuel. While visiting his troops, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared his nation will win with full force. The conflict there has ignited tensions globally and in the U.S.
His name was Wadiha.
Last night, President Biden evoked the name of the Palestinian-American boy who was stabbed to death near Chicago in his pleas to reject hate. Ian Lee, KCAL News.
And now let's bring in Rafael Romo, who is joining us live from Tel Aviv. Rafael, the Israeli Defense Forces saying the majority of hostages in Gaza are still alive. They just released that information just a few hours ago, earlier this morning. What more do we know about that and the ongoing rescue efforts?
Yeah, that's what they said, and we have to take into account that the number of hostages has gone up and down over the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks now since the terrorist attacks by Hamas happened here. Originally, we had heard that it was about 150, as many as 150. Then the figure was brought up to 250, and now the IDF says it's 203. Now, the Israel Defense Forces are not saying exactly how they know specifically that it is 203. And one more thing, they said that they believe that all those 203 are alive. Also not saying how they believe that. Now, let me tell you, everything is depending on what's going to happen in the next few hours, possibly in the next few days. We don't know. With the expected ground invasion, are the Israeli forces waiting for some sort of operation to rescue those hostages to happen before they do the ground incursion, or are those two different operations going to happen at the same time? We don't know at this point, but the families that are waiting to hear news from their loved ones who were taken captive by Hamas, definitely good news to know that their relatives are alive. Marcy, Chris?
Yeah. More than likely alive. They're saying the majority of them, but they also wouldn't clarify what exactly the majority means, whether that's 101 of them, or is it closer to the 200 mark? We're still waiting for more information on that, Rafael. Thank you.
That part's still unknown. But yesterday we did talk about aid that was supposed to be allowed in. What are we learning about the delays this morning?
Yeah, it is very unfortunate because it was expected that the aid was going to cross into Gaza today. It didn't happen, and there's a number of reasons why it didn't happen. It has to do with the disrepair of roads around the Rafah border crossing that have been bombed out, and security is also a concern. Specifically, how do you deliver the badly needed aid in a war zone? The World Health Organization director said the trucks are loaded and ready to go in Egypt, close to the border, and will start delivering supplies to civilians as soon as the border crossing reopens. But as you may remember, Israel has cut off food, water, medicine, and fuel to Gaza until Hamas releases the hostages it took during the terror attacks on October 7. So this is an urgent need for many, many people, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, many of them who have been displaced from northern Gaza to the south.
And Rafael, as this humanitarian crisis just keeps getting worse, the airstrikes are ongoing. Overnight, Gaza's oldest church, where hundreds of people were taking shelter, was struck. What do we know about that?
Yeah, that's right. And there was a swift condemnation for this attack that appears to have been an Israeli airstrike that damaged the compound at a church, this church in Gaza overnight. Archbishop Atala Hana, the Greek Orthodox Archbishop of Sebastia in Jerusalem, described it as a, quote, new massacre and an attack on Christian heritage. Images we've seen of the scene show extensive damage. These are some reports. There are some reports of some casualties, but it is not clear at this point how many people died or were injured. The Israel Defense Forces acknowledged the strike, saying that a wall of a church in the area was damaged, but didn't say anything about casualties. So at this point, the situation is very fluid, very unclear at this point how many people might have died. Chris, Marcy?
Okay, Rafael Romo live for us once again in Tel Aviv this morning. Thank you so much for your reporting.
CBS News Los Angeles, your local news, streaming wherever, whenever.